Do I hear a motion to approve the certification of the closed session?
I motion that we approve the certification of closed session.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Staskill. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Mead with the second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. At this time, if we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is back there to your left. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, item 3 on the agenda is the reorganization of the school board / appointments. First up is the election of a chair. Board members, do I hear a motion to elect a chair?
Yes, Dr. Nichols, I would like to make the motion to elect and appoint Mrs. Swinford to the chair for the new for the upcoming year.
All right, we do have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I second the motion.
Ms. Barber with the second. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other motions?
Yes. I would like to make a motion to elect. Am I doing it?
On the chair?
On the chair.
No, we're not. No,
Okay, sorry.
sorry, that's okay. Just checking. Still on the chair. Okay, any discussion regarding the chair? Okay, Ms. Swinford has been, there's a motion for Ms. Swinford to be the chair for the New Kent School Board for 22. We have a second. It's time for a vote. So all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, Ms. Swinford is officially the chair of the New Kent County School Board, which means I am no longer in charge. So Ms. Swinford.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Next on the agenda is the election of a vice chair. So board members, do I hear a motion to elect a vice chair?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion to elect and appoint Mr. Wayne Mead as Vice Chair for 2022.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mead. Board members, do I hear a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Board members, is there any discussion? Okay, if no discussion, then is there a vote? Let's take a vote, please. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Congratulations, Mr. Mead, on Vice Chair for 2022 New Kent County School Board. Next on the agenda, 3B, is the appointment of clerk and deputy clerk. Board members, do I hear a motion to appoint Johanna Davis as board clerk and Brian Nichols, Dr. Brian Nichols, as deputy clerk?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mr. Hannah Davis as our clerk and Dr. Nichols as our deputy clerk.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Staskill. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mead. Is there any discussion, board members? Okay, and a vote, please. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, and congratulations, Ms. Davis as board clerk and Dr. Brian Nichols as deputy clerk for this year. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda is to adopt the VSBA Code of Conduct. Board members, do I hear a motion to adopt the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members and school board clerk?
I move we adopt the VSBA Code of Conduct for school board members and Code of Conduct for school board clerks.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Barber. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Staskill. Any discussion, board members? All right, and a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Motion carries. Under the presentations and recognitions portion of the agenda, Dr. Nichols, the Virginia School Principals Appreciation Week, which is January 24th through the 28th.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Swinford. Principals Appreciation Week does fall in January. The National Principal Appreciation falls in October, and the Virginia Principals Appreciation Month is in the spring. But Virginia Principals Appreciation Week is upon us, and we do want to thank our principals who are in attendance tonight. I will tell you, it has been a unique year, to say the least. And the hard work that our principals have done has not gone unnoticed. Their ability to make changes, shifts, keep our schools running and keep our kids in person 5 days a week has been absolutely remarkable. So we do want to thank them and do want them to acknowledge them. So next slide, please. So we do have our proud principals here, so I will not go on and say a lot about each of them, but just so you can have a face with the name, we have Mr. Chris Valdrigi, who's New Kent High School. And we also have in her first year as principal, Frank Wheeler, New Kent Middle School. Although she's only been here, I think, 2 weeks, we still very much appreciate the work that she's doing. So Mr. Mack retired in December. So Tammy Kvajerek is our principal at George Watkins Elementary School. And has really hit the ground running. The principal without a full building is here as well. So we have Mr. Kyle Moser, who you see at work sessions all the time. He's our principal at Quinton Elementary School. He's the planning principal. And we also have Dr. Amy Stam from New Kent Elementary School is with us tonight. And I will tell you, if you have to be leading a school division in the pandemic, these are the principals that you want to have with you. And the teachers and the staff have really done a tremendous job. So Principals Appreciation Week is coming up, but we appreciate our principals every night and we appreciate every day. We appreciate them being here with us tonight. So thank you, Ms. Swinford.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols, and thank you to all of our principals. Certainly appreciate all of your hard work. Moving along on the agenda, number 6, the consent agenda. Board members, by now you have had the opportunity to review the items listed on the consent agenda, including minutes from previous meetings, bills and payroll, monthly financials, and the superintendent's recommendations regarding personnel matters. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barber. Do I hear a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Is there any discussion, board members? All right, with no discussion, all in favor say aye for the vote.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Madam Chairman, I would like to make a motion. Well, I believe that it's important to hear from all constituent voices. I move that we allow the practice of ceding one's time to another citizen, but only at the discretion of the school board chair.
Okay, board members, you hear the motion on the floor. Do I hear a second for the motion presented?
Could you explain that again, please? Could you repeat what you said, please?
Yes, I am asking that we allow the practice of ceding one's time to another citizen, but only at the discretion of the school board chair. And I'm doing that based on.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Okay. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to cede time at the discretion of the school board chair. Is there a second for that motion, board members? Hearing no second, the motion fails. Okay. Thank you, Ms. McBeal. Moving along under citizen comment period. Superintendent's responses to citizen comments from December 2021. Dr. Nichols.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Swinford. It is our practice to do responses to citizen comments at our work sessions, but we did not have a work session in December, so that brings us to this meeting tonight. So we'll go through some of those questions, and then some of them will actually be presentations tonight and then moving forward. And then we'll actually get into tonight's citizen comment period. So we had several questions about vaccines and vaccines being left up to the parent. We do not have a mandate in place for families, and vaccines are a family parent decision. So I wanted to cover that piece. Have mask mandates been discussed? Yes, at length. We actually have a presentation later this evening, a health update, and we'll go into that piece as well. So more information coming there. Had a theme around education, curriculum concerns, history content, books, so forth. Our content that we teach comes from the standards of learning, which school divisions are required to teach from the state. Our textbooks come from a state-approved list. We are going to do connected to social emotional learning. We have some questions about that. We have a presentation coming up at a work session to go more in depth with that. So try to answer some of those questions in a longer form there. We do invite families and public in to see that material, whether it's textbook, whether it's curriculum, whatever the case may be. So we did have a question about SWell scores. And I do have, I think, 2 slides. Ross Middle put those up for me. All right. So here's some general data points for you. Prior to the pandemic, New Kent County Public Schools are performing at or above the state average in all tested subjects. March 2020, schools were closed, and then last year was virtual for much of the year, and then in person in a hybrid format 4 days a week for elementary students. So what we have for you is the Virginia pass rate, and then we have the New Kent County Public Schools current pass rate. Virginia's declined, New Kent County Public Schools declined. One of the most interesting things in here are the lack of test takers, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But we fully anticipated scores going down quite significantly, because when you close schools in March and then schools do not look like they did before, it just shows the importance of in-person learning and why we're fighting so hard to stay in person. But even working through that, New Kent County Public Schools outperformed the state average in 4 of 5 subjects. 13 of the 19 individual tests that are given, 16 of the 19 individual tests, our average scores were actually higher than the state. The decline was less than the state average in 3 of 5 subjects. Where we really took some mathematics across the state had a big decline. And then for us, history and science, especially at the elementary level, was not as much of a priority. The priority was in English and math. The science test in elementary is 4th and 5th grade content. And we know those 4th graders that left March 2020 and came back in 21 missed quite a bit of that content. We also saw a huge reduction in students tested. So I want to jump to the next slide. There we go. So here's 2018-19. That is the last regular year, if you call it a regular year, that we had. The percentages you see is not performance. That's the percent of kids that took the test. So 99% in English, reading, 97% in math, 99% in science. There's a rule that 95% of your kids have to test. So 2021, those are the percentage of kids that tested. And you're probably looking at it and go, why is it so much lower than in previous years? Because not all the kids were in the building. So the virtual test that kids took, if you were a virtual student, and just under 40% of our kids were virtual last year, elementary and middle, you took a different version of a test that did not count towards the scores. Because we don't know who's there. We don't know who's, not that any kid would have somebody else take information, but that's why that is not included in there. So you can see the science where we did have a pretty big drop. Only 49% of our kids took that test. These results were not used for accreditation. So it's really a difficult comparison. We know we have a lot of work to do. School divisions do. 302 New Kent students formally opted out of testing. That is an unheard of number in New Kent. families said, we're not taking the test. I think that pattern is going to continue to grow. We also had 250 fewer students enrolled. Because of lack of internet access and other reasons, we had families that were not with us last year that are back with us this year. There's some other nuances related to scores that I won't get into, but just wanted to present those scores. Kind of talk about some of the components, answer any questions from the board. More importantly, I want to talk about what we're doing about it. I tell you, Ross Miller's not in person, but he still gets those transitions pretty well. So addressing unfinished learning. We kicked off the largest summer school program that we've had in New Kent, and that's the Summer of More extended summer school offerings K-12. This was our pilot year last year. We will continue to grow that program. In elementary school, our students are receiving intervention in the classroom and from reading and math specialists. Middle school, most students now have a double block of English and math. So we really prioritize English and math at the middle school, utilizing online math intervention programs. And high school intervention, students have opportunities both during the day and during office hours after school by subject area for additional intervention. So outside of offering excellent instruction 5 days a week in person, which is a huge benefit, we're also doing more things around unfinished learning. So wanted to have that in there as well. So that was the longest answer to a citizen comment period question, but it just seemed to really need some slides with it.
Board members, any comments or questions on that data provided?
No, thank you, Dr. Nichols, for that, for the update and information and doing the homework. The thing I think that is most encouraging about that is that based on the information that we had from going from 18 and 19 to the COVID, is how your staff and all the schools did everything they possibly could to try to fill the holes with being proactive in the Summer More program. And I know that we've talked at length about how that program was piloted to continue throughout the next few summers with funding that we have received to help fill in the holes again, so that we can get back on track, so that hopefully we're back at that 95-99% range of testing in person, which will probably increase significantly this year, I would assume, obviously.
Absolutely. And this year, as part of the state's program, our students in grades 3 through 8 took a fall assessment, which is going to be a growth assessment. They'll get another assessment, the SWell assessment, in the spring. So we'll actually be able to measure growth, and we'll certainly bring that presentation to the board and the public and show the growth that students are making on the SWell assessments.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else, board members? Any other comments or questions?
This one's for, I did have one more category
Yes.
of citizen
Please go
comments.
ahead. Yes, go ahead.
So we did have a question about safety and SROs and a plan of removing SROs. So if you're following national trends and even some in Virginia, you've seen some school divisions move away from having a school resource officer or a sheriff's officer, police officer in schools. That couldn't be further from the plan in New Kent. We have a great partnership with our sheriff's department. The sheriff and I talk all the time. We have one of our SROs here with us tonight. We couldn't do this work without them, and I think we have a great partnership with them. We have a criminal justice program at Bridging Communities. So there are no plans to reduce. As a matter of fact, in our budget presentation that you'll see in the coming months, you'll see an additional resource officer for Quinton Elementary School. So we will actually be adding a resource officer. So I did want to dispel that piece. So thank you, Ms. Swinford.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. All right, moving along to citizen comments. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight to speak, those that have signed up. Please note that comments are limited to 3 minutes. Once the timer sounds, please promptly finish your comment and return to your seat. It is customary for the school board not to make comment during the citizen comment period. Please make sure your contact information is provided on the sign-up sheet if you would like someone to follow up with you. Thank you again for coming. You'll see we have a new layout, a new format for our board meeting. We also have an on deck, not an on deck circle, but an on deck seating area. So what I will do is I will call up the three people. And if your name is, if you're ready to speak and I've called your name, please speak. And if you're waiting, if you're number 2 or 3 or the next, second or third person online, please have a seat to the left of Dr. Nichols, to your right, so that we can move things along. This was a citizen suggestion, so we did implement that. You can notice. So thank you very much. The first 3 speakers, Victoria Brame, Heather Dombrowski, and JB Benson. All right, go ahead. Thank you. Sure.
Hi, I'm Victoria Winterhalter Brame. I am a former middle school teacher and I am a current English professor. I teach children's literature to future teachers. First, I want to follow up on the status of The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's been 2 months since I first contested its removal. During the December meeting, Dr. Nichols explained the middle school library collection was being reorganized to accommodate parent choice. It is my understanding that this process is complete, so I'm wondering why the Poet X currently is not available for checkout. Next, I want to advocate for the diverse books in our school libraries. The first lesson I teach in my children's literature course involves the TED Talk, The Danger of a Single Story. In it, Adichie explains how a single story creates stereotypes. And the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but that they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. The parent who requested the removal of the Poet X would have people believe that there is a single story here in New Kent, that everyone wants to censor what children read, that parents aren't capable for deciding for themselves what their children read. But she is wrong. The single story does not exist here in New Kent. Since I moved here 17 years ago, I have befriended New Kent residents from all walks of life: religious, atheist, military, passive, gay, straight, white, black, brown, Republican, Democrat, independent. We are all here. We are not a single story. And I will not stand by while someone tries to convince you that we do not exist. Or worse, that our varied voices do not matter, because that's not true. We are all members of this community. Our children attend these public schools. And this is why our library collections must contain diverse books. Each parent has the right to decide what their child checks out of a public school library. No parent should be making that decision for another parent. We need diverse books because, as renowned educator Dr. Bishop explains, books are windows and mirrors. Windows because we can view the world we don't know, and mirrors because they offer us a means of self-affirmation. Dr. Bishop argues books enable students to see themselves as part of a larger human experience. If we're going to be New Kent strong, then we need to embrace that mindset. We should not remove books from our school libraries so that there is only one single story. Instead, we need to fill them with many different stories. This will provide our children the skills that they need to get along not only in this diverse community, but also thrive in the global community our public schools are responsible
Thank you, Ms. Brame.
for preparing them to live and work in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Ms. Dombrowski, and after JB Benson. I'm sorry, I cannot read the speaker after Mr. Benson and before Mr. Miller. So if you could come and Okay, great. If you could come up, then you'll be next after Mr. Benson. Thank you. My apologies. Thank you. Go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening. Heather Dombrowski from District 3. I'm here again to voice opposition to any implementation of vaccine or mask mandates in New Kent schools. In regards to vaccines, Dr. Robert Malone, a virologist and immunologist who has made significant contributions to the mRNA vaccine, has issued strong caution to those who seek to have their children vaccinated against COVID-19. He has indicated that in regards to myocarditis, the inflammation of the heart, there is a good chance that if your child takes the vaccine, they won't be damaged, they won't show clinical symptoms, but they may have subclinical damage. Do you want to take your chance with that child? If you draw the short straw and your child is damaged, there's no way to fix it. He says he gets emails about this all the time. He's compiled information on his website with peer-reviewed studies related to COVID-19 vaccine adverse events in children, the main one being myocarditis. One page on his website points to a paper published in the Toxicology Reports Journal in which authors noted using data from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that normalized data on COVID-19 deaths per capital are negligible in children, while deaths after COVID-19 children are small, but not negligible in children. For children, the chances of death from COVID-19 are negligible, but the chances of serious damages over their lifetime from the toxic inoculations are not negligible. Why are we vaccinating children against COVID-19? He also issued a warning stating, mRNA-based COVID-19 vaccines inject a viral gene into your children's cells that force your children's bodies to make toxic spike proteins. These can cause permanent damage in children's critical organs, including their brain and nervous system, their heart and blood vessels, including blood clots, the reproductive system, and this vaccine can trigger fundamental changes to their immunity. The state should not be forcing itself into the family, as you just stated. The decisions belong at the level of parents, not at the level of the state or the school board. School boards and schools and teachers have no right to understand and seek out medical information about their students. That's illegal, and yet it's being done across this country. And students are being bullied if they don't take the vaccine. It's illegal based on the Nuremberg Code and is only available through emergency use authorization. They are not licensed products and their risks are being blocked through censorship. Dr. Peter McCullough, leading cardiologist and epidemiologist, likewise asserts that healthy children do not need to be vaccinated. He states that in 2021, out of the 600 children who died after infection from COVID-19 were also known to have other serious, severe illnesses. In regards to masks, I found an article published by The Atlantic on December 16th, advising that the case that the CDC presented as their reasoning for wearing masks is very flawed. The study is done on very shaky science. Some well-known scientists indicated that the study the CDC based it on, which came out of Arizona, said that it would not pass a 7th grade science contest. I'm going to leave this information with you and I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. JB Benson and Mr. Miller, you're
I could barely hear that.
in the queue.
That, I could barely hear that.
JB Benson, District 5. Congratulations, Madam Chair, on your elevation. It's good to be the king, or in your case, the chair.
Thank you.
Also, thank you for this new arrangement. I think y'all have done a very professional job of setting the room up. And I know we've gone through several iterations, but I know the public appreciates what you've done. Now, tonight, I have 2 requests, or should I say, I had 2 requests. First request was this. I ask that the board vote tonight to make masks optional or voluntary in New Kent County schools as soon as the state directive for masks is removed. I think that probably will happen this month. And if it does, I think you should be on record as having taken a position. My second ask was going to be that if you value the relationship that you bear to the community, the citizens who come here, I was going to ask you to give the chair discretion about the 3-minute seating. And I want to thank my representative, Molly McBeath, for making that motion. I think it's very unfortunate that she could not get a second to her motion so that you could discuss and vote on it. I think what you did, though, is your vote. I don't think you realize the impact, although I tried to explain it last time with my sledgehammer and gnat analogy, the impact that your vote, which seemed totally unnecessary in November to change the policy. Several of you, when approached, go back to the 3 minutes is enough time. That was never the point. The point is the message of authority that was set. And I think that by making that policy and refusing to reassess it, you've taken a position that puts you at odds with a lot of the community. Now, before I leave here, I want to say something about teachers. Eventually, as you know, I want to get to the curriculum. That's what's important, the students. We don't say much about teachers here. But teachers, this is a very, very noble position and calling. My son-in-law is a teacher. Where else can you spend 5, 6, 7 hours a day influencing the youth of tomorrow? It's pretty special. It's more time than parents spend with them. And so I do want to salute teachers before I leave here. And I hope our next
Mr.
meeting,
Benson, your time is up. Thank you.
we can bear down on curriculum. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you, JB. Ann? Okay. And Fran Kennedy, you're up after.
Hi,
Mr.
I'm
Moore.
Ann Hatchell. Hey, Pastor Wayne, how you doing?
Good.
I completely agree with JB. I'd like to state it's relevant as to the view that you're giving the community on your cooperation or lack of. They are the folks that do put you all in position. They are the folks that are being the recipients of the actions. And I think to rethink would be really relevant. Now, there's a site called VAERS.com. It's all of the numbers, personal posts of folks that have had, and I can't get it to pull in here for some reason. These are personal numbers that people have put on the site of their own experiences from COVID vaccine. And the numbers are massive. You're not hearing this from Big Pharma. You're not hearing it from the government, but you are hearing it from the people. If you look it up, you'll see what I'm speaking of. I lost a family relative in 2003 to SARS. She was 19 years old. She was a thriving young lady working at Hanover Friends Church in Mechanicsville and contracted SARS from 2 parents that had been to China. There is no vaccine for SARS. Never has been and still isn't. Masks are not stopping that. Rachel passed in 2003, I'm sorry. She was 19 years old. She had graduated from Lee Davis. She didn't get to live her life though. But a mask wouldn't have stopped it. And it's not going to stop it here. It's not going to stop it anywhere. And herd immunity is relevant. It's very important. I played in horse manure and dirt and creeks when I grew up. You've got to build immunity. And children in a schoolroom are getting detrimentally affected by this. not seeing people speak. Some can't hear well. Y'all know what this is doing to them. And I would hope that it would weigh upon your conscience to make change. To hear people, acknowledge it, and do something to act on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Miller, and after Ms. Kennedy, Ron Voigt, see you in the queue.
Madam Chair, my name is Tom Miller. I live in District 5. And I'd just like to ask you all to consider to take some type of vote tonight on masking, because we think the governor is going to put that decision down to the school divisions, and we don't want to wait 2 weeks before you have another meeting to vote on it. So I really ask you to take that into consideration. It was the November 22nd school board work session where the board voted to curtail the practice of seating minutes from one speaker to another. At the next meeting, almost 50 citizens attended, 18 spoke, most of them addressed this issue and weren't very happy with this board. Draft minutes from the work session sent to us had no mention of this discussion and the 5-0 vote to stop allowing one citizen to allow another citizen to use their 3 minutes. A few days later, revised minutes were sent out where the discussion and the vote was included. So my question is, who made the decision to omit the information from the minutes? And please don't insult me by telling me that it was administrative error. In reviewing the draft minutes and the YouTube recording, I have a question in the minutes which were paraphrased a bit from the YouTube actual recording. Let me make my point on this. I quote from the YouTube recording. The chair says, "I know we have checked with other divisions and asked about seating their time. If that was part of their practice, how long people spoke. Do we want to address this or just the ability for people to cede their time?" Ms. Barber then says, and I quote, "I think over several recent meetings, people come in with a premeditated strategy to string together a couple of 3 minutes. So basically, we had a number of people ceding time." Ms. Swinford then says, "I would agree with Ms. Barber. I think that the board has been evolving through this process of citizens' comments, which we appreciate. But we do agree that citizens have 3 minutes to speak and make their point, and they are welcome to come back every month and at the monthly meetings to speak. But the process and the adoption of seating time is not just something that we as a board agree." Notice how frequently you all use the term "we." So my question is, where did you make this decision? How did you make this decision? And before the school board meeting? And I would hope the superintendent can answer that at the next time he responds to citizen comments. For the record, there were about 4 or 5 times where minutes were seated. In one case twice, and in the rest 1 time. I don't think it was a major problem. In the future, some of us will be publishing our own minutes to the school board meeting, and we will live stream this meeting. And I want to make one more comment. You all say how wonderful it is that the citizens speak. One of you went to see one of our state elected officials and actually complained about the
Mr. Miller, your time is
grandparents.
over.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
Can you please
Fran
adjust
Kennedy?
the volume on that so that it goes off, so that
and
everybody can
after
hear it?
Mr. Voigt is Anna Maya.
Good evening, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope everybody's doing well. A couple of things. Moral relativism is described as moral standards are defined by the culture. And I completely disagree with that whole theory. God's laws are immutable. The culture, our culture today does not define moral standards. So let me make a plea that we have decent books in our library and that we don't just default to what the culture is saying is okay, because take a step and look at the culture. The culture is insane. And not every book is a good book. So I wasn't planning to say this, but in response to a comment, let's have decent books in our library for the sake of our children. Winston Churchill famously said, thank you. Winston Churchill famously said, "You have enemies, good. That means you stood for something." So you all stood together and voted, citizens will not cede their time. Okay, fine. I would like you, since you took the initiative to vote for that, I would like to know what your vote is regarding masks. We vote for you to serve our community. How do you feel regarding masks? Do you have the courage? Do you have the courage to make a vote regarding masks? How you individually feel? Because I don't think masks are good for children in terms of education, and that really is what matters. Children being able to come to school and learn effectively, stress-free and no anxiety, and learn. This is what we are, a school board, correct? The children need to learn. And so I challenge you to take a vote. You voted to not let us cede our time. I challenge you to take a vote on letting parents decide what is best for their children in regards for masking. Thank you.
Ms. Kennedy. Voight next. Thank you.
I too welcome the new format, being able to see you and look at you. So I commend you in that. Thank you for doing that. Good evening. My name is Ron Vaught. I'm here this evening to share with you factual information about mandating face masks for our children. In the event that there are changes with the new governor, I hope that we will see a positive change in our schools here. In a study out of the University of Southern California, it states the benefits of masks and preventing serious illness or death from COVID-19 among children are infinitesimally small. At the same time, they are disruptive to learning and communication in the classroom. They may be partially effective in shielding adults from COVID, but since when is it ethical to burden our children for the benefit of the adults? The article continues, COVID-19 is less of a threat to children than accidents or the common flu. The survival rate among American children with confirmed cases is approximately 99.9%. Remarkably, recent studies find an even higher survival rate. The article states the long-term harm to children from masking is potentially enormous. Masking is a psychological stressor for children and disrupts learning. Covering the lower half of the face of both the teacher and the pupil reduces the ability to communicate. In particular, children lose the experience of mimicking expression, an essential tool of nonverbal communication. Positive emotions such as laughing, smiling, become much less recognizable, and negative emotions get amplified. Bonding between teachers and students take a hit. Overall, it is likely that a child will experience anxiety and depression, which are already at pandemic levels. I want to remind all of you also that you were not elected nor hired to be parents, which is a decision that should be made by parents. As a school board and staff, I would hope that you would remain focused on the basic principles of education. Let me assure you, we the citizens are not interested in the least in political ideologies or mandates or dictates of decisions made without votes. I would hope you would stop constructing walls without voting and mandating such things as mandatory masks, and work together with the citizens for the best education and learning environment possible for the students of New Kent County.
Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
for your
Vaught.
time.
Thank you. Ms. Meyer, thank you. And Ms. Trivett, you're in the queue along with Gilda Black.
My name is Anna Maya Atkins, and I really appreciate this setting. This is more inclusive of us, and it makes a big, huge difference. I really appreciate you guys doing this. Thank you, Dr. Nichols, for saying what you said about the vaccines, that it's up to the parent. That is just really the right way to do this. And about the 3-minute rule that you guys, just did, I hope you reconsider, because it's really the wrong thing to do. So just reconsider that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
To the citizens of New Kent, pardon me showing you my back. It may be my better side. Thanks for the laugh. 3 topics in 3 minutes. Go. 1, please vote tonight or call a special meeting within the next 1 to 2 weeks to vote to drop the mask requirement. Please make it optional. Number 2, trust the people of New Kent, the citizens, to manage our precious 3 minutes for our comments. In kindergarten, I learned to share. Number 3, what should our children be reading in our public schools? It's a topic for discussion, and I think we should have those discussions. We have a committee forming at the middle school to begin reviewing material. That's a great process. I know for sure what our children shouldn't be reading. Things like pornography, child sex slavery, sexual grooming of children. The list goes on with things I'm not even going to mention in public. You all know what they are. We see these themes in the great literature of our society. That literature has stood the test of time. When we read about those themes in the classics, we leave the book elevated. And our society is better for having dealt with those topics in that way. When I read some of the books in our school libraries, it's salacious. It's not for the edification of the mind or the soul, and it harms young minds. It's up to the parents to decide what our children should read. The content in our schools should be uplifting and educational, not salacious and harmful. If a parent wants to take their child to the free public library, they may let their child check out anything they like. If the parent wants to go onto Amazon, they may buy any book in the world for their child. They may walk into any bookstore and buy any book they choose. But as far as I'm concerned, I will fight this battle on this hill. My children will not be able to check out trash from the New Kent County Public Libraries. Thank you.
Thank you. And Emily White, if you want to come sit in the queue, thank you. Feel the black when you're ready. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Want you all to know that I'm not seeking an adversarial relationship with anyone in New Kent County Schools. I love our schools and the system has loved me and mine and many people I love and care about. We're all here for the same reason. We're here because we care about our kids. I am very concerned about our SEL second step curriculum and am glad to hear that there will be a presentation on that tonight. Why would we have a curriculum that parents have very limited access to? My understanding is that the only way that parents can see it is to go to the schools and pore over it in front of a computer that no copies will be made available to them. If I'm wrong about this, I will be happy to hear that. It just doesn't make sense to me that a program would be designed, a curriculum would be designed to make parents and the community do that, to come into the schools. And it begs the question of the reason for that design. I'll reserve my additional comments on SEL until I hear more about it tonight. I'm against mandatory mask wearing and vaccinations in New Kent County schools and anywhere else for that matter. Please allow our parents to make this decision for their children. Parents who want their children to wear masks and take the vaccination have the right to make these decisions. The rest of us apparently do not. And this is the United States of America. Please take a stand. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Emily White, our last speaker for the evening.
Hello, I'm Emily White. I wanted to really kind of ask about the new guidelines for COVID. I know the CDC is saying 5 days if you have it, and the school hasn't updated that, or the county. Just kind of checking on that. There's a lot of kids missing a lot of school just because someone walked past them and coughed, and it's getting a little ridiculous. So hopefully we can address that, especially with the CDC having these guidelines out. I hope follow the science has been the phrase of the 2 years. So hopefully that will be something we can do in the county, is kind of restrict the amount of time they have to be at home if they're not sick. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, under new business, the CIP transfer for athletics, which is goal 3 on our management and stewardship of resources. Ms. Haney Morheim. Thank you.
Madam Chair, school board members, we bring to you this evening a transfer request for our athletic department. There's 3 particular items within this request, so we detailed each item out specifically. One is a general FY21 year-end operating transfer request into FY22 for annual athletic expenses. Additionally, we'd like to make a CIP transfer to provide dirt, clay, and laser leveling of the softball and baseball fields. The final request is for all-weather sound system for the high school athletic field. The total of these 3 requests is $42,340.
Board members, any question on the data presented here?
So, Ms. Morcom, you have it broken out into three budget numbers. Is that, so those represent the dirt and clay and then the laser leveling? Is that how that's broken out?
Actually, Ms. Barber, the middle line item for the $9,800, make sure I'm reading that correctly. Yes, ma'am. The $9,800 is for the dirt, the clay, and the laser leveling of both the softball and baseball fields.
Okay.
The $33,000 transfer, that's typically something that we bring to you each year, so that's fairly common. We did that the last fiscal year also.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This does come before you a little bit later for action, I do believe.
Okay. The next item is budget update. We just really wanted to kind of bring to you a little bit of conversation about where we are. We're just getting started in the process. Actually, it's kind of a year-round process, these days, but we are formally meeting with staff on the division leadership team. It certainly is still unprecedented. We really have multiple years of data that really you can't compare apples to oranges, because there's been just so many variables over the past few years. But the goal is still to move New Kent forward and still to look at our federal stimulus or our federal figures for the pandemic, and also how that can support us. But we also need to focus on our general operating budget. 2 big items for today. The governor has proposed a 5% increase for all staff for FY23 and 24. This is approximately $1.3 million for New Kent. The funding for this is about half of that. So that is a local match that's required for that. If New Kent is not able to match that, there is an option to have a prorated increase up to 2.5%. We're also looking at healthcare projections that are not favorable. We are extremely hopeful that the usage in our healthcare will come down over the next few months so that we're able to get a more favorable estimate. I don't even really want to speak it. I kind of want to wait and see where we're going to be, but you will see an actual increase for that budgeted when we present our recommended budget. As we have seen in past years, that won't come to you really until closer to April and May, as we really get our renewals with our healthcare, and McGriff will come and present those options. Dr. Nichols and I were at a conference today in Richmond for VAS and VASPO. We heard a lot about significant amounts of discretionary funds available. So we are very anxious to see how this plays out, what changes are made. And we look forward to sharing those with you as we are made aware. We also heard a lot about advocating for the support cap to be removed. And we did get a lot of really useful information that we will also, I'd like to collect that and provide that to you so that you have that information to advocate for that during this session. Also, we'll continue to work with the county on planning the opening of Quinton Elementary School in the fall. And so you will see separate dollars specifically that have been planned and approved for the operating budget specifically for Quinton Elementary School. And those are some of the items that you can be expecting to see. If anyone has any questions, we can certainly entertain them. Outside of that, you will just hear about it probably every meeting upcoming until we ask for your approval.
So were you encouraged by the meeting today about the some additional funding that could possibly be used in this year coming up, or is it for future use?
I think a little bit of both. I do think, Mr. Mead, we're going to continue to see a lot more grant opportunities coming forward in the current year. Also moving forward into next year. Some of the examples we've told you about are incentives for staff for various reasons. We did get some promising news on ways we can use ESSER funding for retention for staff, which I think could potentially be something that we look forward to as we go into next year. Outside of that, for next year specifically, I am hopeful of what we'll see, and potentially we could see a little bit more revenue. Right now, with the calc tool that we've received and our healthcare increase, I'm a little bit nervous. We will be talking about, things we can do to cut back. I would really like to strive to get the 5% and really push forward with that. So we'll have meetings with the county finance team and Mr. Hathaway, and really try to make sure that we're planning to be able to do these things for our staff.
I think that last year when we did the 2-on-2, where we did the 2 Board of Supervisors members meeting with 2 school board members, and it was open dialogue and asking a lot of informal questions and things like that, really getting into the nuts and bolts. That was really helpful. I think it's going to be really important. I mean, we were just in closed session earlier talking about salaries and making sure that we're staying competitive with other places, and we find that we are often not. So we need to make sure that we're ahead of that.
Yes, ma'am. And I do think this is a good year. I know the county is doing a salary study scale, so that they will be having a lot of those conversations on their side. And I think we can most definitely come together with Mr. Hathaway and their team to make sure we're doing some of the same for our different groups of employees. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much. I think that is to echo what Ms. Haskell said. I think that we are in a climate, unfortunately, where inflation is escalating at such a quick pace. And then to be able to catch up with that is going to be one of the challenges for most localities, and ours included, that our revenue is going to have to outpace inflation to a degree so that we can be competitive and pay our employees the wages to stay competitive in the marketplace, because we know now that it's a very challenging marketplace of competing with teachers and staff and technology and things of that nature. So I appreciate your staff, Ms. Moorheim, and all of their hard work in budgeting, and for our human resource department and Allison and all that they do to help make this journey financially as challenging as it is, but at the same time, using every resource that we have to make it beneficial for our employees and for the citizens of New Kent. So thank you for all your hard work.
You're welcome. And I would like to say today at the meeting, there was a lot of conversations around one-time expenses and how folks are using the pandemic funding really to still be creative and move their districts forward. It was a proud moment for me. I don't know if for Dr. Nichols, hearing the panel discussions about creative things that they've done. And we've done a lot of what other localities have done, but I think we were also doing a little bit more and trying to move our county forward. And we really look forward to trying to push in on that as much as we can, but keeping in mind that our operating funds, once you build those into your base, you need to continue most of those. So we just have to creatively work through that process together.
There was a moment at the conference on the panel and the superintendent said, and the most innovative thing we did, and we're like, yes, bring it. And they said, it was like, wow, we did that first. Like taking out water fountains is not the most innovative thing. And, we're talking like, let's do some. So it was a proud moment how hard we worked with our schools and with the board on some, and we'll continue to do that. They've shifted some of the rules, but allow us to do a little more. I think Ms. Mortimer's point about the raise, it was all in the paper about 10% raise for teachers. The question is always going to be who's actually paying for that, and come to find out, as we peel back the layers, locality is going to pick up, at least in New Kent, at least half of them. So it's not 10%, it's 5 each year, and then the county has to pick up, or city locality has to pick up a great share of it. And the other nuance to throw in that this is Governor Northam's budget. Governor Youngkin's going to have a lot to say about where that money goes, and the exciting piece is there are billions of dollars, because the economy's been so good or better than projected, that could go towards education, could go towards some of these things. So there'll be some shifts and changes, and we'll keep shifting and changing along with it.
And with the salaries, I think we've been very competitive and done a lot of really interesting things on the benefit side. And we're trying to offer creative ways of things that we can do differently in New Kent. But especially now with the healthcare, the challenges there, it is time that we really focus on everything. And I think we will put a lot of work in, and you'll see that, I think, in this budget recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Morheim. We're very much aware of the great resignation. I think every employer is aware of that. So we look forward to this, to the budget season. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, Dr. Nichols, health update.
Yes, board members, I do have a health update for you. I do want one point of clarification. It was mentioned that SEL presentation tonight. If I said that in open comments, I misspoke. What I meant to say, or hope I said, was at the upcoming work session. So tonight's the regular board meeting. We'll have a longer presentation around SEL specifically at the work session. So if I misspoke, I do apologize, but tonight it's about updated health information. So we'll take you through the latest information. All right, so New Kent health data. The last time I did a health update for you is on the next slide. So the last time we had a health update was 11/3/21. And I presented the data on where New Kent was specifically. So number of new cases reported, 4, 7-day average 4, you can see the numbers. And you can see at that point, we were trending in a really nice direction towards the end of that graph. So here's where we are as of 11/7. I'm sorry, not 11/7, January 7th, 2022. And this is the same chart, just different date. So you can see that chart is now trending in a very different direction. No surprise. I'm sure it's the same at your workplace or community or so forth. It really is trending in the wrong direction, unfortunately. It's almost 2 different worlds from the time we went away for the holidays to coming back. So I have it on a chart for you on the next slide, just to compare the two. So same data, just side by side. Number of new cases has grown from 4 a day to 36. Rate per 100,000 and total new cases per 100,000. So you can see it's drastically shifted. Once again, that's no surprise. But just wanted to show you the latest VDH data and mirror the presentation that we did last time. School-related positive cases and quarantines. I'll take you into a little bit of this data. Board members, feel free to stop at any point in time and ask questions. So the staffing is the biggest piece for us, making sure that we have the staff to operate the school. So from August 21 to December 22, I had 82 staff members having quarantines related to exposures, positives, positive cases in the household. That is kind of where we were. This first week that we just finished, I had 38. So you can see that spike that we've seen in the community really having with our staff as well. As a matter of fact, we had 23 come back today. We had 23 go out today across the weekend, different scenarios and so forth. So when I thanked our principals in the beginning of this, it's no small feat when you're missing 10 or 12 or 16 people to make learning happen. And credit to all of our staff, our teachers that are covering periods and teaching things that are not in their content, our paraprofessionals that are stepping up and covering classrooms, you name it, it's all in. Members of my team substituting and supporting and making that happen. That's really the biggest difficulty that we have. And I see that trending, at least for the next couple of weeks, in a similar direction. I do have hope, although hope is not a strategy, moving into February, that we could be in a little bit different place. I do not have an update with you on the student piece. We don't have, that data is still being uploaded. I will share that with you. The staff, we have a really good record of because staff has to report to us and they couldn't come in on Monday. Actually, it's snow on Monday, but anyway. Student piece, if a student didn't arrive or came back on that Wednesday, we don't know if that was related to quarantines or positive cases. So we're still working through that data. Right now, that data is trending a little bit higher, but not nearly as significant as the teacher piece in this moment. I've received a number of questions, both community and staff-wise, about a move to virtual learning. So if we were to move to virtual learning for any portion of time, and that is not something that any of us want to do. School is better in person. Our staff will tell you that, our students will tell you that, our family and community will tell you that. And that will continue to be our priority. But if we were to move to virtual, it's always going to be for the shortest period of time possible. Senate Bill 1303, which is law, requires in-person learning 5 days a week. There are caveats to that you can have unscheduled remote learning days. That's the fancy term for we can't have school in person. There is a provision for that, but that is to be done in conjunction with your health department. So what I wanted to show you was sort of levels of a closure if we had to get to that point. Level one, we do all the time, and that's just a simple student or staff member quarantine. When a student or staff member has to be out, that's really the level one piece. Level two, we are doing right now and have done since the pandemic started, where we have a classroom of students who moves virtual to a period of time. So teacher virtual or teachers here, students are virtual during that quarantine piece. Level three would be a specific school moves to virtual. So let's say a school that does not exist in New Kent, and we'll get to specific examples in a second, is not able to staff the school. We simply do not have enough people to be there on that day. Then we would have a shift of that school. Once again, for the shortest period of time possible. Could be a day, could be 2 days. Chesapeake, which I'll reference in a minute, is going to reassess theirs. Today was their first day moving virtual, 6 of their schools. They're going to reassess on Wednesday. It really is a staffing formula. And then level 4 would be all schools would move to virtual. So I just wanted to show you that progression because if you watch the national news, you can see Chicago, you can see some school divisions, different states, everybody does it different. That's the Virginia context with it. So it would be in that order with the priority on in-person learning. Changes CDC guidance, which was mentioned, and we're still working through that. Guidance that changes on December 28th, when we're all home for the holidays, is interesting to try to tackle. There are two main areas of change, and this is a little bit of an eye test, and I will not read it to you. But this is the new CDC guidance. It allows this isolation time to be shortened if you have a positive test from 10 days to 5 days under two conditions. You have no symptoms or your symptoms are getting better. And the other one is you can come back after 5 days, but you must wear a mask for the additional 5 days after isolation. And that would be for an adult or a kid, the rules are pretty much applied the same. So just a note about fever. Two, if you've been exposed to someone with quarantine, the updated requirements for that period really mirror that. That it's the 5 days, and as long as you don't develop symptoms and you wear a well-fitting mask for additional 5 days. So that is what the CDC got brought forward in their new guidance. The additional bullets are about the different vaccines and the boosters and so forth. So the current rule that they're operating under for staff is that your vaccines are up to date. So you have to have your vaccine and booster in order not to quarantine. For students, it's just the vaccine. The booster is not figured into the equation. So we had a meeting, part of the conference Ms. Morcom was talking about, with the director of the Virginia Department of Health, and was explaining those clarifications. So that's a lot, but we have a little bit more that can break down. And feel free, board members, to ask a question at any time as we're going through this.
Would you say, Dr. Nichols, is that if a parent has a concern, is that they should contact the school directly if they have versus trying to call the health department or trying to call? How should their protocol work if their student was or their child was exposed or tested positive, or their child was exposed to someone who was positive? What is the avenue they should go down in terms of getting clarification of where their student or their child falls in that venue?
That's a great question, Mr. Mead. And I will tell you the quickest route is to contact your school nurse, because we know the school rules better, and we're easier to get to, quite frankly. The health department, when we started this journey this year specifically, said, we're going to do all the contact tracing. We're like, great. That allows us to do the business of education. So quickly, they could not keep up with the contact tracing and said, hey, we need you to do the contact tracing. We'll do the letters to come back to school after 10 days and letters to come back with a negative test. They're like, okay, we'll take it on. About 4 weeks into school, they said, we can't keep up with the 10-day letters. You're going to have to do this. Got it. We're doing that. Just this week, they've said, we're no longer going to be the ones that require the negative test. We need, so I've shouted out our principals and our teachers and stuff, but our nurses and clinic aides have just taken on a whole nother job than they originally signed up to do. So the last part of it is you had to provide a negative test to the health department to come back on day 8, and that was staff, students, that they're no longer going to be the one that sees that goes directly to the school. So the school is basically, long answer to your question, Mr. Mead, the school is basically taking over all of that. One, that allows us to handle it and we can move quicker. 2, it's a significant burden on our folks, but that would be the most direct route, Mr. Mead.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
The CDC updated their guidance on 1/6 and made some recommendations for our school children. And so we're still at 10 days for both. So when are we gonna?
Absolutely. Great question. So what does this mean for schools? School districts are still allowed to have more stringent isolation. I'll give you an example. We've been at 10 days. There are school divisions in the Commonwealth of Virginia that still make 14. And we've been very successful at 10 days. Right now, today, and this evolves. So we've heard rumor that they may start requiring a test to come back after 5 days. We've heard, different pieces. We put the new CDC guidelines in place immediately for staff. One, in an effort to safely keep schools open. So our adults are following the new CDC guidelines, which allows them to return after 5 days of isolation instead of the 10, if they meet that criteria. And we go with each staff member, our human resource department does. Right now, and we met with our health department last week, which was not as helpful as we would like it to be. Students are following the 10-day or the return with the negative test. We're working on that, looking at that, and we'll be meeting with our principals on it. One of the things that we're having difficulty around the shift to 5 days, student specific, and I'll just give you one example, is lunch. So teacher comes back day 5, wears their mask, does everything they need to do. They can go in the classroom or they can isolate from lunch. At New Kent High School, where you have 1,000 kids and you may have 100 coming back on day 6, I don't know do we set up a COVID lunch, a separate lunch space, who monitors, it's a logistical piece that we're trying to work through, and how can we do it safely?
Well, also, wouldn't that ostracize, isn't that kind of a violation of their HIPAA rights?
Well,
If you were to do something like that?
So we would be sort of flagging / naming a kid who
Right.
Was positive, and if, having been through it myself, to be back on day 6, I could definitely see that happen. My worry would be a junior in the middle of that lunchroom with 300 other kids. And just making sure, not saying we can't do it, not saying we won't move that way, not saying you can't say go that way. We're just trying to figure out the logistics for the staff was much easier to figure out, so we started immediately. And then we're trying to figure out the best way for the student piece.
Now, just so I'm clear on this.
Yes.
For a student to come back, they need a negative test, correct?
Or to come back day 8, yes. To come back day 10, no. So you're not required to have a negative test to come back day 10. You're not required. We have had families that still want to do the entire 14 because that's supposedly the gold platinum standard. And we work with families on that. We're just trying to find the safest, most direct route back for kids.
And we don't care what kind of test. Do we?
No,
Okay.
no. And that's back to the whole things continue to change. The only thing that is certain is that it'll change. Last year when we did this, we could only have a PCR test. We couldn't have a rapid. Now we're allowed to take the rapid. We're allowed to take anything at this point. So just kind of working through that piece and making sure we can do it safely and prevent additional outbreaks. So that's, you may see another recommendation coming forward or an update in the coming weeks. That was the topic of conversation with superintendents today at our meeting, is trying to figure that out because we're all trying to wrestle with, we would love to get kids back sooner, safely. How do we do that with those other pieces? How does athletics intersect? So if you have a basketball player, are they allowed to play basketball during those 5? Just interesting little nuances that we have to iron out before we roll out entirely. So PE, recess. So if a 3rd grader is on day 6 and they come back and they go to recess, do they have to wear a mask on recess? VDH couldn't give us an answer on that. So they don't have all of those answers either. Right now, if you're at recess wearing a mask, it's a good thing because it's cold outside. But outside of that, I don't know if that's productive or not.
So our workflows on our website have not been updated, our quarantine workflows.
Yes. We have a draft that we wanted to do a public presentation tonight. We have a draft that's ready to go, and I would do a communication to families this week as well, so that everything matches.
I would say, I think a lot of us were excited with the 5-day change, because we want to keep kids in school. We certainly do. Board members, I'd like to hear from you, your thoughts on that. And if it's something, we need to address, talk more about.
I personally like the hybrid model. I think that it's a nice buffer for not being able to isolate the kids while they don't have to, if they've tested positive or for whatever reason they were out. So I think this is a good way to try to think out of the box and do better.
Yeah, I think the real challenge is that especially with these students that have been exposed and they're and they have no symptoms? And then how do you keep them isolated because they have no symptoms? And then they come back after their 5 days and now they got to start all over. And I think that's part of the challenge of them trying to figure it out, because most school systems, and ours included, we're not designed to be an everyday testing site. We don't have 10,000 tests that we can use every 5 days for someone to say, oh, you just came out of quarantine, you're negative, you're good to go, see you later. And I think that's going to be that challenge, as you said, Dr. Nichols, of how do we integrate these students back in with the students that are already there so that we don't have this huge overlap of shutting down continual classrooms over issues.
And the CDC has recommended a new strategy, or a newer strategy called Test to Stay, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute. It's really about layered mitigation. So what are all the different ways that we can provide those mitigation or cleaning protocol, everything that we do. So Ms. Miller, I think you're okay to go next slide. So this is that same information from the VDH around isolation that I read to you. We'll actually have a version of that up as well. So I think the next slide, Mr. Miller, goes to. It does not. We'll go vaccine updates. So vaccine updates, boosters have been authorized for 12+. That happened over the holidays. This data, you've got the link right there, comes straight from VDH. Just so you have an idea of the percent of New Kent's population vaccinated with at least one dose by age group. So
this is New Kent data?
This is New Kent data specifically. This is as of 1/7, and it's with at least one dose. I will tell you, when you look at it by fully vaccinated, the only number that changes dramatically, and it's no surprise, is the 5 to 11. So that is, if we were shown today by the Virginia Department of Health vaccination by county and so forth, and New Kent's right in there with most other counties by any age group. So that's a little bit of vaccine updates. Mask updates, talk about that a little bit. As soon as the next slide comes up. There we go. 3 current sources of guidance and rules, and this is straight from the last presentation I did for you, with one addition which has been highlighted. Virginia's Senate Bill 1303. We've talked about this at length, the language that you must follow the CDC guidance to the largest extent practicable, and you decide what practicable is. CDC guidance for COVID-19 prevention in K-12 schools still has the masking in it, even the latest guidance that was updated on the 6th of January. Right now, today, we're still under the Virginia State Health Commissioner's order of public health emergency statewide requirement to wear masks. As has been mentioned several times tonight, that is anticipated to be changed with Governor-elect Youngkin. So we do believe we are days, if not weeks, away from that change and clarification on what that means. So there's still a lot of questions about what that actually means. So right now, masks are required for everyone, adults and kids, with limited exceptions, regardless of vaccine status. So just wanted to bring that third one and that anticipated change. So that is very much on our radar. If you've been following local news, you've seen this. 2 school divisions, Chesapeake and Roanoke County, voted recently to make masking optional. Chesapeake reversed their decision in a special meeting of all days, New Year's Eve, and then Roanoke County, within the same week of making that decision, reversed their decision. And I'm not giving you this information to say one decision or another, but what we've prided ourselves in New Kent since the beginning of this pandemic is we continue to move forward. We haven't said we're doing this and then we reverse. So we just want to be very sound in what we're doing. Chesapeake coincidentally announced on Friday that 6 of their schools, which I mentioned, are reverting to virtual due to their COVID numbers. And that is a staffing issue in talking directly to Chesapeake. So how long is the mask mandate in place? There's been a lot of additional research on what kinds of masks are effective, and cloth versus surgical versus N95s. And we do have Ross, you're fine on that slide. So we do have the surgical masks available for students, and we have N95s that we've ordered staff or available. One of our biggest issues related to masks is the rules that we have to follow in terms of quarantine. So it has really little to do with the value of a mask, the impact of a mask. It's the number of kids / adults that we have to quarantine. So this is straight from the presentation I gave you in November. So positive student in this scenario, 3 feet with mask, no additional, they probably want to. No additional students have to quarantine in this scenario. And we have this happen all the time. We have one student who tests positive, nobody else has to quarantine. Our biggest quarantines, and I've said this many times, are lunch and the bus. Those 2 areas where you're not able to space or you're not wearing masks. Same example, same classroom, 3 feet without masks. It's just the additional quarantine members. My primary goal is to operate school in person 5 days a week and take care of kids and our staff safely. We're struggling on the quarantine side of things right now. And that's with this in place. Now, that's not to say in 2 weeks, the CDC doesn't change their guidance once again and provide different rules for us to play by. Every time they do that, we adjust and we make that happen. So next slide, please, Ms. Miller. So a question that several board members have asked is, what are we working towards? What is the number where we feel it would be safe or beneficial, not beneficial, but safe to take masks off? This is a recent research study, American Association of Pediatrics published, and it has a 4-week model. So we do not have to adopt this. We can adopt this. We can move. We can do. I just wanted to present something to you. So step 1 is universal masking for 4 weeks. Step 2 is you assess the school impact. So you can go either low, medium, or high. Step 3, assess the school impact, number of quarantines, staffing, all of those pieces. If that is low, you move left. You assess the community transmission level. If that is moderate or low, you go optional masking in those different categories. Like I said, all of this can be tweaked. But if we wanted to go with a method that says, when this happens, we do this, this is a pretty comprehensive approach with data that we have readily available.
And these are based on the CDC numbers. Is that the categories, the high, moderate?
Correct. Yes. The school impact would really be our data based on our number of quarantines, number of classrooms that have shifted virtual, and we'd be able to assess those pieces. So that puts it in 4 weeks chunks. My biggest worry, to be completely transparent and honest, is the number of quarantines that we'll have to do and our inability to have in-person school, period. Not whether something is effective or ineffective or those pieces. It's just my priority and my responsibility. What keeps me up at night is making sure that we're able to do this. We've seen the impact on kids and community when we're not able to do that. My team, the principals, everybody's working really hard day and night to make sure that we keep kids in school. And we'll continue to do that no matter what. But that's just a decision-making model to share with you guys. Our next steps, we daily is probably not as often as we are tracking it. I looked at our staffing one, I think at least a dozen times by noon today, just making sure we had everybody where we needed them to be. We have our bi-weekly health department meeting. We're moving forward to Mr. Mead's point. We are not able to do on-site testing. Once again, that is not the business we signed up for, but we're in the process of doing it to have our own on-site testing. Once again, this is voluntary. Well, maybe not voluntary for staff, that's part of being employed, but for students, the testing piece, Virginia Department of Health is moving forward with a test to stay model. And what that means is, let's say my son has an exposure. Under current regulations, he would have to go home. He could test to stay during that 5 or 10, whatever the window is we have, and he can stay as long as he continues to test negative. That would be a parent permission thing, but we've got to get it we have to have it stood up. We have to have the staff to do it, and we have to have the test here, which we know is a real issue. Under the umbrella of things change rather quickly, this presentation was done, but as we sat in the conference today, I got an email from Virginia Department of Health saying due to interest, they only took 10 schools. They asked 10 school divisions to be part of pilot. Would any other school divisions be willing to pilot? You have until tomorrow at 5 p.m. to give your intent. We gave ours 11 seconds after it went out. Like we're in, we'll do, because if I can keep a kid in school safely or keep a staff member in school safely, I want to be part of that. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. We'll get more detail on that. But that's another way that we could further reduce quarantine, even less than 5 days. Like you may not have to miss time at all. It'll be a monumental undertaking, but you know what? We do what it takes to keep kids in school. That's what we'll do. I thought that perhaps the last health update we did in November, our work sessions have become reoccurring presentations. I used to do a return to learn presentation every work session. I'm glad I'm out of that business, but now we do a school construction update. What I'm proposing to the board is that we bring these data points back to you at each work session to determine, one, so the public knows where we are, but also determine the next best step. So that's kind of what I have for you tonight on the health side of things. So I know you've been able to ask some questions throughout, but I'd be more than happy to take any more questions from the board at this time.
So Dr. Nichols, so do I understand correctly, if we went to a test to stay model, then we would be issued tests and we would have somebody that was administering those tests on site?
So the first answer is yes, we would have tests that would be delivered to us. Would we have somebody in addition to be the tester? I don't know the answer to that yet. So we have two things that are going on at the same time. So we have us standing up an on-site testing program. That on-site testing program could serve the purpose of test to stay. So they could merge into one. It's a matter of what we get first.
Well, and
Go ahead, Mrs. Steska.
I was just gonna say, and would they ride the bus and then get tested once they're here?
Yeah, that's the logistics that we would have to work out with families, depending on when we found out they were exposed and all of those things. I do have to say that our parents have been incredible on communication regarding positives, regarding exposures, I mean, you couldn't ask for, on the whole, better families to work with on terms of that communication. So those would be some of the logistics that we would have to work out. Does the parent bring them, to test? Yeah, how do we test at the end of the day? So I don't, those are all the different pieces that we have to, but if we can stand up on-site testing, we're ready to go with test to stay. But test to stay may move faster than on-site testing. Working with the Virginia Department of Health is not the speediest process in the world. So whatever we can stand up first is what we would move with. But once again, that's all parent permission, communication throughout, trying to minimize quarantines.
Well, Dr. Nichols, I think we can work on the next steps slide to talk about what that means, what the updates mean at the next work session. I'm sure things will change significantly throughout this week into the weekend. And, we can work on what those updates will look like so that we can make a good decision with more data. Board members, any more thoughts on that, or on the next work session, what we want to be doing?
So I can start it at this work session if the board likes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, back to our agenda. We are at action items with the approval of the CIP transfer athletics. Board members, the question, do I hear a motion to approve the CIP transfer for athletics recommendation as presented?
I move we approve the CIP transfer of funds for athletics as presented.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barber. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion carries. We've updated our agenda. We're on the comments section, number 11, for school board member comments and superintendent comments. Board members, I'll go down the row. Any comments, Ms. Barber?
I just want to express my appreciation for the administration, getting everybody back into school after the weather was held us back for a couple of days, and everything that you do to keep our students in school and being educated.
I have a comment regarding my vote to not allow the ceding of time. Regarding my vote to not allow a person to cede their time to another, I have carefully considered the comments and concerns of those in attendance in our last board meeting, as well as those who I've spoken with who choose not to speak publicly. I believe that 3 minutes is a sufficient amount of time to pose concise public comments, questions, and/or concerns. If more time is needed, I believe another type of communication, such as a phone call, a meeting, or an email would be best. However, I'm not sure I communicated one point that I think is important that I want to clarify. Not allowing the ceding of time does not mean that a person cannot begin with, I'm here to speak on behalf of myself, Jane Doe, John Doe, and then go on to make their points in 3 minutes. I believe, speaking only for myself, that public comments should be concise and productive, and I believe that 3 minutes per speaker is adequate. I hope this helps explain the reason why behind my vote.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Daskell. Mr. Mead?
Yeah, my hope for 2022 as we move forward, and again, I echo the comments of Ms. Barber there, is that, and as I have seen over the last 9 months, is that in how the citizens have become more and more engaged, which I am greatly appreciative of in many of their comments. But my encouragement to the citizens and to the folks who continually, are more and more engaged is I remember as a parent when we moved here 16 years ago. And one of the comments I made to my wife was that now that New Kent County is our home, the way that this is going to be our home is because we're going to choose to be engaged in the school system. If my children are going to go to school here, all 3 of my daughters went to school here and all 3 of them graduated from New Kent. The first thing my wife did was become a substitute teacher. She says, I'm going to find out what's going on every day. And starting at Watkins Elementary, she was a substitute teacher. When our children moved up to middle school, she was a substitute teacher. When they moved into high school, she was a substitute teacher because she was determined, and I was determined, is that we want to know what goes on every single day in our schools. And then for myself personally, I know that, so how do I find out in a bigger picture? So then I chose to coach. I became an assistant volunteer coach at the high school level, and then I became the head baseball coach of middle school. And my encouragement to the citizens and to the parents here is that my hope for you is that if you have the flexibility, you want to really find out what's going on in New Kent County school system, sign up to be a substitute teacher, volunteer to read in the library, ask to come in and sit in a class and see how the school system does it. And I can tell you as a parent and having 3 daughters that excelled here, we have built lifelong relationships within the school division, and that's probably my main motivation for running for school board, because I believed in the school system and in the engagement of our teachers. And so as parents and citizens become more engaged. I would challenge parents and citizens to take it a step further, because we have so many needs within our division of parents being engaged, like the library situation. And so I would encourage you, as we move forward and as we become a better board and as we become a better community, the way to do that is to get everyone engaged. And I mean that in a real tangible way for hands-on. So I look forward to 2022 and seeing the opportunities that are presented to our citizens and to our families here in New Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Mead. Mrs. McBee?
Yes, well, I want to thank Dr. Nichols, the administrative team, the staff, teachers, our families and students for rising and adapting to continue to meet the challenges that this year has brought. Greatly appreciate that. Also want to congratulate again Ms. Swinford and Mr. Mead on their appointments to chair and vice chair respectively. As I previously have commented, we definitely continue to see great interest from our New Kent families and overall community regarding our schools. Attendance, viewership, and citizens speaking at our school board meetings continue to increase. I believe the format of Dr. Nichols reporting back on citizen concerns is effective and has been working well. I think as a board, we're getting better. I mean, we're trying to make needs-based focused presentations based on what you all are interested in. And this is an evolving process, and look forward to continue working with this board as we move through 2022.
Thank you. Dr. Nichols, I'll make my comments and then I'll let you go ahead. Is that all right?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to start with my thank yous as well to Fire Chief Rick O'Peck and to Dr. Nichols for their strong partnership. They collaborated closely before, during, and after the weather that came our way January 2nd through the 4th. Thank you to Mervyn Henson and his transportation staff. They continue to keep our children safe. We certainly appreciate that. Some other good news. Thank you to Rosie's Gaming Emporium at Colonial Downs for their generous donation of $10,000 back on December 17th to the New Kent Educational Foundation as part of our annual Bowl-a-thon fundraiser. That money came late, but we certainly appreciated it. And that money will be used for teacher grants, for student scholarships, and other special projects. The policy to limit public comment to one person per 3 minutes isn't new. While we had a practice of allowing people to defer their time, we had no formal policy around it. As those of you that are paying attention know, we do now. We have a policy, and that is settled policy with this board voting and feeling unanimous on the topic. I would also like to add that if someone has a challenge making a point in 3 minutes, I ask you to consider why that might be. Secondly, the board welcomes parent and grandparent involvement all the time. As a board, we welcome your comments monthly, but we ask you to personally get involved in helping the schools with their mission. I understand that volunteering in this capacity may not be initially as gratifying as pointing out what you see as issues in our schools. However, I hope that over time, you would get much more fulfillment in getting the opportunity to actually see our students and staff in action and help them with your experience. If you have a question about how you can get involved, please reach out to myself or Dr. Nichols or any other board member. Finally, I most certainly agree that learning loss is real, and we want to do everything possible to keep our schools open and to keep learning in person. We will continue to ensure that this happens safely. I would encourage everyone to talk to their family doctor, their pediatrician about the vaccine and the booster, and make the best decision possible for the sake of our schools and the broader community. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Swinford. I do want to say Happy New Year. We got off to an interesting start with a snowstorm, followed by ice, followed by whatever else came our way. But I too want to echo my thanks to Chief O'Pett to Mervin, to Mr. Hockman, and everybody that helps us make a good decision. There's no sleep on a night where we're getting weather in the superintendent's house anyway. I used to love snow days. I think we're going to have one on Saturday. That's great because we're not in school on Monday. Let it snow. But it really takes a team to make that happen. And that's how we've kept schools open. That's how we built Summer of More. That's how we've won some of the awards that we've won. That's how we're going to show great growth this school year, is because we have an incredible team and an awesome community that I'm privileged to call home. So I'm excited about the new year. I know we're going to work through this. I know each time we come together, we're going to be in a different place, hopefully a better place, and continue to move that forward. But just want to say thank you to everyone just for the opportunity to be a superintendent in New Kent. I'd be dealing with a pandemic anywhere I was. I get to do it here. And I get to do it in a place where my son will walk across the graduation stage that we call home, and it's really an awesome community. So thank you for everybody. Thank you to everybody who makes it that. So those are my comments. Ms. Swinford.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Next item, upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today, our work session on Monday, January 24th.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. This meeting is adjourned at 7:48.